Let me ask you a difficult question. What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't what you are doing? It's what you are tolerating, not externally, but internally. What if you have become so accustomed to living with internal conflict that you have mistaken it for normal? You wake up tired, you overthink simple decisions, you constantly feel like you are behind. You achieve goals, yet somehow feel strangely unfulfilled. You keep telling yourself, once I get through this season, things will settle down. But they never do, because the problem isn't the season, the problem is the system. And every day that system remains misaligned, you are paying a price, even you don't realize it. Today, I want to talk about the hidden cost of staying internally misaligned. Not the obvious costs, not the invisible ones, the opportunities you never recognize, the relationships that quietly weaken, the decisions that become unnecessarily difficult, the emotional energy that disappears without you noticing. By the end of this video, you'll understand why internal misalignment is far more expensive than most people imagine, and why restoring internal coherence may be the highest return investment you ever make. So let's begin. One of the greatest dangers in life is that not every cost shows up immediately. Think about a small crack in a building's foundation. At first, nothing dramatic happens. The walls still stand, the doors still open, the roof stays in place. From the outside, everything looks fine, but underneath, pressure is accumulating. And over time, the entire structure becomes vulnerable. Internal misalignment works exactly the same way. It works exactly the same way. Most people don't wake up one morning completely burnt out. They drift there, one compromised value at a time, one ignored emotion at a time, one unnecessary obligation at a time, one decision that violated their priorities at a time. The danger isn't the single moment. The danger is accumulated effect. That is why many high capacity individuals don't realize they are internally misaligned until they are emotionally exhausted. Not because the signs weren't there, because the costs accumulated quietly. Let's begin with one of the biggest costs: decision fatigue. Many people think they struggle with decisions because life is complicated. Often, life isn't the issue. Internal conflict is the issue. Imagine driving a car where the steering wheel constantly pulls to one side. Every kilometer requires correction. The destination hasn't changed, but the journey demands more energy. That is what internal misalignment does. Every decision becomes heavier because different parts of you want different outcomes. One part wants significance, another part wants security, one part wants peace, another part wants approval, one part wants rest, another part feels guilty, slowing down. Eventually, your mental energy becomes consumed by internal negotiation. Here is the tragedy. You blame yourself. You think, why can't I make simple decisions anymore? Why? The answer isn't a lack of intelligence, it's lack of internal agreement. It is lack of internal agreement. The second cost is emotional exhaustion. Here is something I have observed repeatedly. Many high performers aren't tired because they are working too much. No. They are tired because they are carrying too much internal contradiction. Too much of it. They have suppressed emotions. They have conflicting priorities. They have unresolved disappointments. Pressure to become someone they are not. All of that requires energy. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every single day. Eventually, you stop noticing the weight until someone removes it from your back. Only then do you realize how exhausted you have become. Internal misalignment works the same way. You adapt to unnecessary emotional weight until coherence restores what you have forgotten was possible. The third cost is relationships. Think about it. When you are internally divided, patience decreases. Listening becomes harder. You become emotionally reactive. You withdraw when people need connection. Or you become so focused on managing your internal tension that you have little capacity left for others. The relationship suffers. Not because you stopped caring, but because your internal system is overwhelmed. This may be the greatest cost of all. Not failure, potential never realized. That's the greatest cost of all. Think about Tony Stark. His greatest breakthroughs happened when he stopped reacting to fear and began acting from clarity. The same is true for us. Internal conflict quietly limits creativity. It limits leadership, innovation, courage, vision. Not because those qualities disappear, but because they're buried underneath internal noise. One of the greatest tragedies isn't that people fail. It is that they never discover what they are capable of because of so much of their energy is spent fighting themselves. That is why I believe internal coherence isn't simply about reducing stress. It's about releasing capacity. Every internal conflict resolved returns energy to your life. Energy that can now be vested in leadership, in relationships, in purpose, in creativity, in contribution. That is transformational. If the costs are so significant, why do people remain internally misaligned? Why? Because misalignment often feels familiar, and familiarity feels safe. Many people have lived with internal conflict for so long that they mistake it for personality. They say, that is how I am. I've always overthought things. Stress is just part of success. That is what leadership requires. But what if those statements aren't truths? What if they are not truth? What if they are adaptations? One of the central ideas behind my internal coherence recalibration model is that many of our patterns are not permanent. They are responses to pressure, to fear, to past experience, to unexamined beliefs, and what has been learned can often be recalibrated. The moment people realize that they don't have to keep living from old internal patterns, everything begins changing. Yeah, everything begins changing. Let me leave you with this. Every decision carries a cost. Changing has a cost. Growing has a cost. Recalibrating has a cost. But staying the same also has a cost. The question isn't whether you'll pay. The question is, which cost creates a better future? Because every day you remain internally misaligned, you continue paying with things that matter. Your peace, your clarity, your relationships, your confidence, your creativity, your emotional stability, your leadership, your joy, and perhaps most painfully, your potential. That is too high a price. The good news is this: internal coherence isn't about becoming someone different. It's about removing the unnecessary conflict, preventing you from becoming who you already have the capacity to be. When your values, your priorities, your beliefs, your emotions, your identity, and your actions begin working together, life doesn't suddenly become easy, but it becomes lighter. Decisions become clearer, relationships become healthier, performance becomes more sustainable, and success no longer comes at the expense of your peace. That is why I believe internal coherence recalibration is one of the most valuable investments a high capacity person can make. Because the greatest cost isn't the work required to change. The greatest cost is living another year carrying a burden you were never meant to carry. If this message resonated with you, comment here below with the word alignment. And tell me, which hidden cost of internal misalignment have you experienced most? Is it decision fatigue, emotional exhaustion, strained relationships, or unrealized potential? If you are ready to stop paying the hidden price of internal conflict and start building emotional stability and decision clarity through the internal recalibration model, subscribe to the channel. Because the life you are trying to build deserves an internal foundation strong enough to sustain it.